stuff here too. Wanted to start off though, before we get into your career, what can you tell us? You are involved with something I find to be truly incredible called the National Canadian Tournament. This is something truly unique, as 4 winners will win $5,000, spend 3 months at the Nightmare Factory with QT Marshall. Just an unbelievable opportunity you're providing for everybody. Tell us all about it.
Well, it's thank you for spending the time on this here. It's important to me. I've been working on this with my girlfriend for 9 months now, actually, and recruiting. It's going to be a first in Canada that because there's 10 provinces in Quebec, in Canada, and I'm from the province of Quebec, the French part of Canada, and for the first time, the 10 provinces are going to work together. And so I went to recruit the best independent wrestlers in every province, from Vancouver all the way to Halifax, East Coast to West Coast, and put some prizes together there. Like you said, there's going to be 4 winners of $5,000, and then there's going to be 3 months for wrestling with the school at the Nightmare Factory with QT Marshall, which is a great opening for any kind of Canadian wrestler that wants to make it in an American big league. So this is really exciting, but there's so much to say about this. It's going to be like a reality show, because there's going to be judges around the ring, and we're going to start with 40 contenders on the 15th of May. It's starting on the 15th of May, and we're going to go. There's going to be 4 big shows, and we're going to eliminate 4 wrestlers. We're going to eliminate more than that. We're going to keep 4 wrestlers at the end, but mostly every show there's going to be 4 wrestlers eliminated.
Certainly.
And there's going to be judges by the ring voting for, not judging on who's winning or losing the match, because that's going to be out of the flip of the coin, but it's going to be more like out of the character, the charisma, the ability in the ring, how to talk on a mic, and everything that it takes to make a good wrestler. And so there'll be judges around the ring for that, and the judges are going to vote for 40% of the votes. But the fun part of this contest now, that's going to be seen worldwide on YouTube, you just need to go on wrestling-academy.ca. If you have a chance to put that link there at the end, it's wrestling-academy.ca, and people could subscribe, and then 60% of the people around the globe are going to vote from home on their texto from telephone to see who they want to keep continuing and who they want to eliminate. So it's going to be like a reality show. So this is really awesome.
That's incredible. And, like I said, can't think of a better guy than yourself, with all the years of experience. And that's kind of where I want to start, because you grew up around wrestling. And how did that affect your passion to get into it once you were old enough to do so?
Well, I was born in that. My father was a wrestler. My uncle was a wrestler. My brother Raymond is older than me. He was wrestling before me, like 5 years before me. My great uncle was a wrestler, Eddie Auger. So my 3 sons did wrestling too. So we're 4 generations of wrestling in Quebec. And but I was like 3-4 years old, and I could remember on Sunday nights there. My father was promoting with my uncle Johnny in Montreal, Jacques and Johnny Rougeau, the original Rougeau brothers. And they were promoting the territory here in Montreal. And every Sunday night, they'd have a big opponent come to my house by the river, about 20 miles northeast of Montreal. And they would come and they would take a face-to-face picture for the newspaper the next morning to promote it, like they do in boxing and MMA today. They have the weighing and they have the face-to-face and they promote it. Well, in those days, they'd promote it on Sunday night, and the Monday morning it would be in the papers. And the show would be Monday night, because it was wrestling every Monday. It would be religious. So every Sunday, there's some opponents that would show up in my home, like Abdullah the Butcher or Joe LeDuc or all these big guys, Ivan Koloff, and that would wrestle my uncle, my Johnny. And I was like 3-4 years old, and I could see these men come in the house, and especially Abdullah and Joe LeDuc, they weren't too pretty to look at with all the scars in their foreheads and everything. So I was like really impressed by all that, and I grew up like that, and when my father was such a star, he was such a well received and well liked in the community that almost every Quebecer were following them, and they were seen on TV like every week on Saturdays on TV. So they were really hot shot there. And so when I go to school on Monday morning, and most of the time I'd be so proud, when I was 6-7 years old, I'd be so proud to just tell the guys, tell my friends in the bus, there in the school bus in the morning, hey, did you see the paper this morning? And then sometimes they'd say, yeah, we saw your dad's wrestling Abdullah tonight. And I said, no. Did you look between my father's legs? because I was putting my head there, just to be in the picture. So it was like it was part of my life to become a wrestler, I guess.
That's incredible. And one of the things I researched too, I'm a big Canadian wrestling fan. Truth be told, and we'll talk about it in a bit. Some of my all-time favorite wrestlers are Canadian. Chris Jericho, Bret Hart's my all-time favorite. It's just such a culture out there. What was like wrestling, before you got to the WWF, and we'll get there in a second, but a little bit, for Stampede Wrestling and just being around, the legend that is Stu Hart.
Amazing. When I first started wrestling, my first territory, I was 17 years old, and I used the Rougeau name because it was so popular that they had the Harts out west, and you had the Rougeaus out east, and the reputation of my dad and my uncle was everywhere, and so I remember I was 17 years old, and I weighed about 175 pounds wet, and I was really skinny. Actually, my nickname at home was Bones. Because I was about 6'3" and I weighed 175 pounds. But I had this passion of wrestling since I was young, and I was very good at wrestling because I'd started at the age of 4 years old just to imitate the wrestlers around the pool at home and stuff like that. And I guess I had it in me. So I became passionate about it when I was very young. And then at the age of 17, I told my dad, I said, hey, I'm ready to go on the road. I'd been working like for 2-3 years in little parks and little shows, mini shows and stuff. And my father would look at me and he'd say, hey, you're too young, you're too skinny, work out, just work out a bit. And so finally I went to see my mom without my dad knowing. And I told my mom, I said, Mom, I said, I'm going to go ahead and call Stu Hart in Calgary. And I said, I'd like to go wrestle there for Stampede Wrestling. And so I gave him a call, and I used my notoriety. And so when Stu answered the phone, he was such a character. I don't know if you know Stu personally, but he was such a character. So anyway, I called him on the phone, and I was so when he answered the phone, I said, Mr. Hart, I said, my name is Jimmy Rougeau. My name was Jimmy, by the way, because my in English it was Jimmy and Jacques in French. Sure. And my mother was English. So I said, my name is Jimmy, and out west it was English too, Canada. So I said, my name is Jimmy Rougeau, and I said, I would like to come and work for you, And then he says, are you part of that Rougeau family there? I'll never forget. I thought I was with the weirdest guy on the phone, when he talked like that, but I was so impressed. And then I said, yes. I said, my father is Jacques and my uncle Johnny. And then he said, yeah, maybe we could give you a try there, Jimmy. And so I went to see my mom. And my mom had lent me $500. I'd asked her to borrow $500 because, like I said, my father didn't want me to go on the road yet. So I was very anxious. So my mom gave me $500, and so I could pay my first week at the hotel and pay the trans and everything. And then I started when, actually at that time, Bret Hart was actually driving the bus at that time. He wasn't wrestling yet. And so I started wrestling there. And what an experience. I wrestled like for 4 months. And then I came back to Montreal. And then the next year went back again for another 4 months, and then went to Mexico from there, and had a connection to go to Mexico, and then I started Kansas City and Knoxville, Tennessee, and then I started on the road with all the small territories. But what a great experience to work with Stu Hart. He always wanted to take. He was so nice to me because he respected my dad and my uncle so much out of reputation. So on Sundays, he'd invite me to his home and to have lunch with his family, which was about 16 kids, I think, 17 kids, and they were all there, and there was about 30 cats. But anyway, it was amazing but the hospitality was awesome. And but he'd always try to bring me down to his dungeon. He had this reputation of, and I'd heard about it because guys had told me, whatever you do, don't go in the basement, it's too hard because you'll be sorry. So every time he tried to invite me downstairs after a meal or something, I'd say, oh, Stu, I'd love to go, but I have a date there. I have an appointment with somebody. But what a great family. What a great opportunity that was.
That's excellent. There's a hidden gem out there that I tell people to go back and watch. I'm 40 years old, so I grew up with VHS tapes, right? So I still have them all the old WWF tapes. There was a card shortly after you arrived in the WWF, and it's called the Big Events. And I encourage fans at home, guys, it's called the Big Event, D&E Stadium in August of 1986 in front of 62,000 fans. And this is where the Toronto Blue Jays baseball team played before the Sky Dome. So this is a real big event. You were on that card, you and your brother, wrestling the Dream Team. Now, this is why it's big to me, because the Dream Team is fresh off a title run at this point. They've been champions. They had just lost, so they still had a lot of heat on them, a lot of buzz. And the WWF, the bookers that night, they put you guys over. I mean, how did that feel? Number one, winning in Canada is always huge. And then number two, getting that huge push right off the bat.
Jesus Christ. Thanks for the memory. I don't remember winning. But anyway,
yeah, you did.
Yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, I remember working with the Dream Team. I love to work with Greg the Hammer Valentine, because he was so credible. Like, you know, he was snug in the ring. Like, you know, his chops came in heavy, you know, and everything he did, and he was a good wrestler. I used to watch his dad, Johnny Valentine, who used to work with my dad, you know, so I'd go to the Forum, the Montreal Forum, and see those matches where Johnny Valentine would put up his forearm like this, and he'd put my father's face against the ropes, and he'd come out with a big forearm on the chest. And, you know, and I was always like, oh, shit. And then I know, but I was young at the time, and but I enjoyed his long blonde hair, you know, of Johnny Valentine. And then, so when I worked with Greg, it was like reminiscing in time, like going back in time, seeing my dad, Jacques Rougeau, the same name as me, Jacques Rougeau, going against Greg Valentine. So it was awesome. And he was, I would say that Brutus Beefcake wasn't as talented as Greg. You know, sure. He was, because Greg is like a second generation, but I enjoyed that working them. I even remember Dino Bravo turning on us, you know, with yes. Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus Barber Beefcake. Yeah. But what great matches we had! I really enjoyed that very much.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that too, because kind of leads me right into my next question. So speaking of Dino Bravo, you go into WrestleMania III. And it's a rematch of that match from the Big Event. So against the Rougeau brothers, you guys are still a face team against the Dream Team, with the exception of now Dino Bravo's in their corner. You know, if you could talk about a little bit about the match itself, but really more importantly, you know, like you said, you grew up around wrestling, right? You're a fan of it. This is your whole life. What is it like? 93,000 people. I mean, does it take your breath away when you look up in the crowd? Like, because I know you had to at least once look up and just soak it in.
You know, out of all the things I remember, I'm sure, you know, it doesn't come back to me, like you said, just looking at the fans and everything. It was so huge. But what I do think of is the time before the match, like we had to get on a golf cart to get to the ring. It was so far away. Yeah. And it was like we had to time the thing that the other match was almost not even finished. And we were almost coming on the golf cart. It was so far away, and they wanted to keep the show tight. You know, and but what I remember the most out of all that, and I tell this story in my stand-up comedy shows and my conferences, is like I'm trying to put my boot on, and my foot's going like this. You know, I'm an experienced guy now in the business. You know, and I have almost like 7 years in the business, but I'm like I'm just a mark. And I couldn't understand 93,000 people. You know, how could that be so big? And especially having Andre the Giant in main event against Hulk Hogan. You know, but I was so nervous, and my throat was so dry, because you know any performer that knows what I'm talking about, when if they have some events that are so emotional and so scary. You know, like you don't want to screw up in front of 93,000 people, you know. So my throat was dry, and I couldn't tie my boot. And I was looking at Raymond like saying, this is amazing. Like this is out of the ordinary. And you know, they still have pay-per-views like that today. But that was the first one. That was the first one that had the record like that. And so it was amazing. And then to be honest with you, they're going in there and losing that match was a little painful. But but you know, you have so much exposure. But then again, you know, Dino came in and cheated and helped them win the match, so it wasn't so bad. But I keep this souvenir for the rest of my life, and I do a lot of Comic Cons sometimes, and it's amazing how people come back with that picture of WrestleMania III. You know, they asked me to sign. It's such an historic moment, and also for them, but for me too.
You know, and it's incredible because there were two unbelievable matches to headline the card. There was Macho Man versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Greatest matches ever, right? And there's
Absolutely.
Talk. Now, are you guys, you know, when your match is done, obviously I'm sure you shower or eat or whatever you have to do afterwards. Do you go back and try to watch that through the curtain, or is that just something? Are there monitors backstage? Like, do you get to enjoy that part of the show?
Absolutely, and I watched almost every match on that show, and up to this day today, you know, I'm a little conceited when I say that, but I think that everybody that was on WrestleMania III should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And because you know, you have such talent in there, and everybody was watching the show from backstage, from the first match to the last match with passion, because you know, it's your co-workers that are there, your co-mates, and you have all this exposure worldwide. But, you know, we're all a team. And, you know, and if you have on a card, you have 11 matches and you got 7 bad matches and 4 good matches, that's not going to do the job. So
Right.
You're hoping that all your partners are going to have a great match. You know, you're hoping for that. So like you said, you know, you got it right on the ball there. The Randy Macho Man Savage against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was probably one of the best matches in the history of wrestling.
I agree.
And 2 great talkers, you know, like they had such great promos. And in my wrestling academy, actually, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat has a word for the Canadian wrestlers. So if you go on wrestling-academy.ca, you'll see all the old timers that are part of that show that are giving good words of encouragement. So yes, it's wrestling is actually my life. I like I said, I was in wrestling in 4 years. I was 4 years old. I was introduced to wrestling as a mark, and then I was used as an angle with my dad. I got smart the night that my dad needed me for an angle, and so I lived life in wrestling. I did 41 years of professional wrestling, you know, active in the ring, and now I'm promoting one of the greatest events Canada's ever had, you know, in wrestling again. And I always say that to my girlfriend for fun, but I always say the day that I leave this earth, I hope that you put me in some kind of a raft there in the middle of St. Lawrence River, and then in a wrestling ring there, and burn me in a wrestling ring. You know, that's where I came. That's where my life started, and that's where my life I wanted to end. You know.
True, that's great. So here's the thing. You know, you're with the WWF a couple of years. You're part of this face tag team with your brother, baby faces. You know, but all of a sudden you're a heel, and you go on to be an unbelievable heel, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. But how does this come about? Because it was shortly after WrestleMania IV at Trump Plaza. Suddenly, you and your brother take on Jimmy Hart as your manager, and then you're the All-American Boys, you know, from Memphis, and you're waving the flags. What a great gimmick! Who made the decision to turn you guys heel, and how did you perceive it? Were you happy to change that pace?
Well, first of all, we don't like heavy metal. We don't like rock and roll. All we like to listen to is Barry Manilow. Hey, but you know, yeah, what a great time. To be honest with you, if I'm honest and fair with the fans, we were 2 years. We worked very hard as baby faces, but you know, the Americans, they're not really fans of Quebec people being baby faces and being over. We were great workers, Raymond and I, as baby faces, but we after 2 years. Vince brought us together, and he said, guys, he says, listen. And I remember going to the ring every time we'd have a match, and we'd always get the crowd. You know, it was always hard to start the match, and then finally at the end of the match, we'd get the crowd. And when the Hearts were heels, and it was amazing. People were standing on their feet, and because we knew how to work, Raymond and I, and the Hearts didn't know how to work too. And you know, there was a lot of good heel tag teams. But the truth is Americans didn't want Quebecers heroes. And so Vince told us, he says, guys, the truth is if you guys don't turn heel, we're going to end up finishing your reign now. There's nowhere to go for you guys. So, you know, so we'd like to turn you heel. It was Vince's idea. And when he asked that to us, I said to Raymond, like, we looked at each other like, holy shit. Imagine Uncle Johnny up in his grave there, you know, he's going to be flipping around, you know, because the Rougeau's always been baby faces all their lives, you know. And then I was thinking of all the Quebec fans, you know, our fans here that were behind us all their career, and how they would take it. You know, it was really, and finally it was the best move we've ever done, because, you know, we had some natural heat. Jimmy Hart was the greatest manager of all times, and I would repeat that anytime in front of anybody. You had some great managers. you know, and Fuji, Bobby Heenan, and go on the list. But the best one was Jimmy Hart. And I always like to take a second to explain why.
Sure.
Because Jimmy Hart, he was the only guy in the business that would, not only he would make music for everybody, he recorded every song of music of wrestler. It was always him, from Hulks to anybody. He always did the music. But he was the guy that would have a suit on that would suit your character. Like he would make some coats. He would make some coats always for you, always for his man. He'd go in an interview and he'd never one time do like Bob Heenan would say, you know, I'm the smartest, and Fuji say, I'm smart, I'm this, I'm that, and the guys are slick, we're smart. And Jimmy was never him. It was always, let me tell you something, baby, my man here, my man, he's the greatest, my man and my man and my man. And it was always his man. And you know, he always made his protege or the guy that he was managing, like, we're really fantastic. You know, like he made us feel like that. He made us feel, Jimmy Hart made us feel like if we weren't there, he wouldn't be there. And it wasn't like that, because Jimmy Hart, if he wasn't there, we wouldn't have been so hot. You know, so that's why I'm saying he's the greatest manager. He managed to always give credit to the people he worked for, and people recognize that. And today in Comic Cons, when I go, you know, we all have our, you know, our places. We're sitting down with about 30, 40 talent from the past. And Jimmy Hart's line is always the longest. You know, and just to show you that he was smart. And what a great, and always a guy that never did drugs, never smoked, never went in nightclubs. And I was like that too. So it was fun. So we'd always be up early in the morning. We'd always travel together. And, you know, we'd end up in towns like in Europe. I remember landing in Europe with Jimmy, and everybody was looking for a nightclub or a bar where they could go that night. Well, Jimmy and I were looking for a Toys R Us to go see our dolls, or a place where they have bootleg pictures, where you could buy some pictures, where illegal pictures of us, the frames that people made. But we were always, and we were always on time. Jimmy Hart was always on time, and Raymond and I were like that too. We were very reliable, and that's why I did 10 years with Vince, because Vince knew he could count on us. He knew we'd never miss a flight. He knew that, and we had the professional side not only in the ring but on the outside. So I got away from the subject here, but I just want to make I want to make a statement. I want to make a statement of Jimmy Hart. That you know, I adore that man. I see him sometimes. Again, I saw him in Minneapolis about 2 months ago. We did a Comic-Con together. And once again, there was Greg the Hammer Valentine, there was Bushwhacker Luke, and there was myself with him. And he got in the ring. There was a wrestling show that night, and we signed autographs 2 hours before the show. And when the show started, they introduced Jimmy, and he had such an ovation. And when he got in the ring, the only thing he had to say was good things about Greg, good things about Luke, and good things about me. You know, he never spoke about himself. And I had the chance that night. It was great because I went in the ring, actually, when he introduced me. And instead of saying all kinds of stuff about me, I just told the people and the fans there what I just told you guys now. That I explained, and I had a chance to make him feel like a king. And he was so embarrassed. He was so shy. And he always saying, like, stop it, Jacques, stop it, Jacques. Like, you know, don't talk about me. Don't talk about me. And, you know, so he's such a great person.
You know, it's remarkable too. And I tell a lot of people now, because there's a lot of AEW fans out there that talk about their tag team division being strong, which it is. But, you know, I've said, guys, if you want true tag team wrestling at its best, look at the 80s WWF, the late 80s WWF, and the early 90s WWF. You were a part of two feuds with the Rougeau brothers that I thought both were fantastic for two completely different reasons. One was the Bushwhackers. You guys were this technical wrestling team against these brawlers that were just so unorthodox. You had to love them. Shortly after that, you know, I tell people, go back and look at the tapes. You had a pretty good feud there. It wasn't overly long, but with the Rockers and a young Shawn Michaels, who people need to realize was brand new to the WWF. He wasn't new to wrestling. He was with the AWA. You put him over, and that was huge. What jumped out at you about your matches with the Bushwhackers and their style? And then kind of what jumped out at you about, you know, Shawn Michaels? Did you ever see it coming that he would become one of the greatest of all time?
No, and if I want to start with the Bushwhackers, you know, they were such nice people, you know, and I'd met Luke, especially in the 80s, early 80s, up in Knoxville, Tennessee, for the Fullers and them, and for Knoxville territory and Pensacola territory, and always such a nice guy and a great human being. But Jesus Christ, it wasn't easy to work with those guys, you know, because they like you said, unorthodox. You know, they didn't have, Butch had a little bit more, but you know, Look was more like licking your face and, you know, and doing stunts with people that were getting over like $1 million. But it's hard for wrestlers, technical wrestlers, to get a storyline, you know, or something told, and work a hold and get back to the hold and yay and whoa. But we had so much fun with those guys. You know, I really enjoyed those guys. And actually, if you go on my wrestling-academy.ca, you'll see Luke Williams, one of the Bushwhackers. He gives a good word too of encouragement for the Canadians for the tournament.
He's
the
on the
Wrestling
show
Academy.
too.
You go check that out. It's really nice. He's a really close friend of mine. I always stayed a close friend of mine. Now, if you're going to talk about the Rockers, it's a different style. I admire so much Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, because they were like us. They were wrestlers. They were storytellers. They were good sellers. They were I don't watch wrestling anymore. I haven't in a long time. But what I hear now is like it's more like physical entertainment than responding and selling. Like, you know, like in our days, we could work, like we did some marathon matches. I don't know if you're aware of that, but we did some marathon matches with them. Like that was an hour match where the team that won the most falls would win the match. And we do 1 hour matches, and we'd always finish up where it's 6-5 for them. You know, they beat us at the last minute and something. And we played a joke on Vince McMahon one time. We actually were in the Madison Square Garden, and we finished 5-5, but we didn't tell him. And when the match finished after an hour, I went out, I rolled out on the floor, I was beat up, and I took the microphone and I said, if you think you're gonna get away with this, the Rockers, you're wrong. I want overtime right now. And we did another 11 minutes. So we did an hour and 11 minutes, and then they finally beat us. But we had the Madison Square Gardens on their feet, and better than that, they were such great workers. They wouldn't spend any energy for nothing, and we really had so much chemistry together. I remember doing a match with them, a marathon match in London, England, and at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And when we flew a 3 o'clock flight, then got into Boston at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because there's 6 hours difference. And we did another 1 hour match that night. So we did 2 hours in the same day with those guys. But we could do it with those guys because they were the best. You know, we knew how to resource our energy. Raymond is such a great talent, my brother. You know, he's a basic wrestler with such knowledge, you know, and he was with the years where everything meant something. You did something and he was in great shape. I was the high flyer. My brother was more the grounded kind of guy. And we just come like Marty. Marty was the grounded kind of guy, but Shawn was the high flyer. Shawn was the backflips off the top. And, you know, and we did this spot, me and Shawn, just to give you an example. You know, we killed 10 minutes just at the beginning of the match where I'd come in, we go to lock up. And just as we go to lock up for the first time, I'd say, wait a minute. And then I'd back up from him and I'd just say, hold on, take a look at this. And I just roll on my back on the floor and I'd do a nip up. I'd land right on my feet to show my ability as an athlete. And then I'd look at the people, what about it, And then the people would say, boo. And then I'd look at Shawn and say, come on, you do it. Come on, you do it. And then Shawn would look at me like, come on, let's wrestle. I said, no. Show the people how good you are, you know, show me that you're an athlete. So then he'd go ahead, he'd get on the floor and he'd do a nip up. And when he'd do, the people would go wild. They'd go crazy. And I'd look at the people like, holy shit. Oh, I'd be pissed off because he did it. And then I'd go and we'd do another move where I do some kind, I can't remember what the second move was. We're doing another move. And then I'd say, oh yeah. I'd get out of the ring, and then I'd put my hands on the rope, and I'd do a flip over the top of the ropes to land on my feet in the middle of the ring. And then I'd go, how about that move? You know, and we would just go on. And then I'd work the people, and I'd say, you try it. So he'd be pissed, you know, he'd want to wrestle. And then finally he'd just get out and he'd do the flip over the top. And then people went wild, they went crazy. So then I'd say, okay, now let's wrestle. So we'd go to lock up for the first time again, and he'd duck underneath me, and then he'd climb up the top rope. And then he'd do a backflip from the top rope. And then he'd look at me and he'd say, go ahead, why don't you do that? And I'd go like, holy shit. And I'd look at my brother and we'd work that. And 10 minutes was gone in the match. Yeah. And I finally climb up to the top rope where I'm shaking. I'm a little afraid. My legs are shaking. And then finally he just hits the ropes and I nut shot myself. You know, I land up my nut and I take the bump to the floor. We never had a match yet. And there's like 12 minutes gone in the match. but the people were on their feet.
Oh, sure.
You know, so they're lacking of that, I think, today. They're lacking of going entertainment. Put that in, everything means something. So that's why it was easy to do those marathon matches with Sean and Marty, because they were great athletes and great psychology.
I believe it. Right around that same time, you know, shortly before you left and then came back as the Mountie, they made a pretty big switch where they took the belt off of Hulk Hogan and had him lose cleanly to the Ultimate Warrior. We're going to get to when you beat him cleanly a little bit later, because it's a very short list. It's an extremely short list of people Hogan has let pin him cleanly. But that was a big deal. Again, I was a little kid. I think I was 10 years old, maybe if that, maybe 9 years old, and thought to myself, holy cow, the Ultimate Warrior is the champion? Like, how is this possible? What was the general perception amongst you guys, the boys, as they call them, all the co-workers, all the performers for Vince? Like, did you think, like, this is not a good direction for the company, or it is, or like, I mean, that was a pretty big shock to a lot of people.
You know, to be honest with you, Vince, I got to be honest. My father always said, if you don't have anything good to say about someone, don't talk about it. You know, but I don't want to knock him or nothing. I just want to say that he didn't have the right attitude. He didn't know how to wrestle, you know, and so he didn't have the talent as far as a wrestler goes, but he had the great look and he had a lot of charisma, you know, and he had the big push, you know, but by shaking the ropes and his disguise and his body, that was, but many wrestlers were more credible as far as wrestlers, as far as workers, and so when he walked in the room, like he wanted his own room and he wanted this, and that didn't set in well, and like he had an attitude also that was like he thought he was better than everybody, and so it was hard for us to really like the guy, you know, so unfortunately, where I personally wasn't a big fan of Ultimate Warrior, and but you know, what can I say? You know, there's a little jealousy in there too from some guys. Maybe a lot of guys wanted to be in his spot, wanted to be in his place, and jealousy is a disease that we all have a little bit of, you know, and some more than others. And
yeah, I mean, I'll say it like this, right? And we'll move on. But I look at wrestling now, matches. I watch matches from, you know, my childhood, much differently now as a 40-year-old who has studied the business, who has talked with a ton of performers than I did when I was 10. And so guys I would have cheered for when I was 8, 9, 10 years old I'm sorry, but I didn't know anything, right? As opposed to now I look at some of those decisions and I'm like, my goodness, that's a risk. Like, this guy. And then you hear the stories outside of the ring, and I'm like, oh my God, like, it gets even worse, you know? So definitely there. But definitely want to keep things positive, and I want to keep the space on you here. The Mountie, all right, to me, is one of the most villainous, hateable characters of all time. Like, how do you not hate this guy, right? So the Mountie, I mean, my goodness, you know, I wrote down here, I said that the Mountie is one of the most villainous characters of all time. Whose idea was it? And then on top of that, you come out of the gates unbelievable. A win at the Royal Rumble against Coco Beware, a win at WrestleMania against Tito Santana, one of our all-time favorite guests on the show. Tito, a great guy.
I love him.
These veterans are putting you over like mad. I mean, what was the inspiration behind this? Because this was genius.
You know what? I think the whole inspiration came out of Big Boss Man, you know, out of Vince McMahon liking a Big Boss Man, being a rough county cop jail, where Boss Man was very likable outside of the dressing, you know, in the dressing room, and really one of the nicest guys, almost like an Owen Hart, you know, and then so everybody liked Big Boss Man. I think Vince must have liked him the same way, and I think that he liked me too at the time. He really had this, because we always worked hard. We're all professional, and I consider myself as a good worker. So he had I took a year off from Raymond retiring, and in '89, and I get the phone call at home, like, you know, Jacques, I'd like to have you back there as this character, as the Mountie. And I'm saying, the Mountie? You know, like the shirt I got on here, the Mountie. Yeah. But anyway, and I'm going like, the Mountie? Like, I'm not a Mountie. You know, and then he says, yeah, well, he says, you'll be one. And then but it was so funny because this character is probably the most popular thing I've ever done in my life, you know, and then the things that we've done with this character, like, you know, I'm thinking of just the vignettes. I remember Jesse the Body Ventura on the side of the ring there with Bobby Heenan or Mean Gene Okerlund and commentating, because I wasn't even in the territory yet as the Mountie, but they had these vignettes. You know, they had these little stunts there that they put on TV, just teasers to introduce you. And I remember that teaser that I had. It was just such amazing. Where I was on my horse, I was in a park, you know, in a park in Montebello here, not far from where I live now. And there was a little vignette of you know, there was Mean Gene by the ring. He says, "Well, you know, Mean Gene," he says, "coming to the WWF soon. There's the Mountie from Canada. Let's go take a look at it." So then they have on giant screens around the world now. They're introducing like 5 weeks in a row. They're introducing, but they're using almost the same vignette all the time because it was incredible. Anyway, so I'm sitting on my horse and I got this all this outfit, the hat, and I got this serious badass look on my face. You know, like I hate the world and I hate people. And so this car pulls up beside me, and there's this young couple in the car that they're supposed to be two Americans that are lost. This guy with his girlfriend in the 20s. So he pulls up beside me, and he says to me, he puts his window down, and he says, "Excuse me, officer. Excuse me, officer." Says, "We're lost." He says, actually, he says, "Excuse me, officer. Excuse me, officer." And I look down to him and I says, "I'm not an officer, I'm the Mountie." So then he looks at me and he looks at his girlfriend like, "Holy shit, I think I just found a wacko here." So then he looks back at me and he says, "Excuse me, Mr. Mountie." He says, "Can you tell me," he says, "how to get back to the USA?" He says, "We're lost." So I look at him like an arrogant face, and slowly I put my leg over my horse and I get off slowly. I get right beside the window to the guy where he's driving, and I say, "Come here." So the guy doesn't even want to get out of his car. So he looks at his girlfriend like, "What should I do?" So his girlfriend says, "Come on, get out." So he gets out, so he follows me. So I bring him at the front of my horse. And when I bring him to the front of my horse, I take my horse's mouth like this and I put it up like this in the air. And I look at him and I said, "You see that part of my horse? It always points to Canada." So then he looked at me like he's a little nervous. I said, "Come here." So I bring him in the back of my horse, and then I lift the tail of my horse, and you could see the donut there. And you know, and I lift it, and I look at him and I say, "You see that part of my horse? It always points to the USA." And then so the guy jumps in his car and he just spins the wheels and he gets the hell out of there. And then and I'll tell you, the Americans don't have a good sense of humor, because I did that for 5 weeks. And when I got in the States there, holy shit. People wanted to kill me. They were throwing, you know, the ramps where the hockey players park, you know, in the buildings, they go in the arenas. I was throwing rocks on my head and stuff like that, you know, and I had a point where the policemen had to escort me when I'd land from the airport. I'd go to the hotel, and then I had some people that would escort me all the way into the building because I was getting killed by people. You know, they don't have a sense of humor, I'll tell you.
That was the great, I mean, I'm telling you, like, you know, I still have your action figure. I'm proud that I still have it, just because it was so outrageous. And to me, the ultimate payoff for fans, you know, and obviously you're not going to use your job.
The jailhouse match.
When you went to jail. Like that.
Hey, but you know what, Vince, I got to tell you, before you send me to jail there, I got to say something.
Yeah, sure.
You know, my first match I had was with Coco Beware, my first one. And all the boys, and the idea of the shock stick was mine. It was really my idea. It wasn't Vince's. It was my idea, because it was an old manager in Quebec called Eddie the Brain Creechman, who used to, he was Abdullah's manager at the time in my younger days. And I was like 10, 12 years old in the dressing room for my dad and my uncle. And he used to have this stick, and he used to scare the living death out of me. You know, he'd come and there'd be a little electric thing at the end, and, bzz, bzz, and I'd be so afraid of electricity, you know, when I was young. So I brought that idea to Vince, and he gave it to me. So here I come with my big shock stick, well, actually, against Coco Beware. So we're in the ring, and this shock stick of mine, it has 2 buttons on it. It has the on and off up here, and it's got the emergency down here. So I got 2 buttons just to make sure that this thing doesn't zap, you know, and it's just for show, because it's a real zapper that I have there. It's a lawnmower coil that's reversed, and when the wires do that, they have a flame about this big, about 2 inches. It was really scary, and if you ask me how bad it was, I don't know. I never touched it. But anyway, all this to say, so I got these 2 buttons, and I work with Coco Beware. We got about a 15-minute match, and he's soaking wet. And at the end, I go and I take the shock stick and I zap him. But when I zap him, I didn't know what the hell happened. But anyway, I must have flipped that other flip on in the back. So I start zapping him and he starts shaking. Like, he's all wet now and he's shaking. I'm going to myself in my own mind. I'm saying, Jesus Christ, he's selling the shit out of this. This is good. And then the next thing you know is, when you burn your skin, it smells like pig. It smells like pig a little bit. So now I start smelling the pig, and I'm going like, wow, Vince is good with his special effects. Holy shit, this is good. So anyways, I end up going back to the dressing room. Now, this is my first impression. You don't have a second chance to make a first impression from all the boys backstage. So I get back and the boys are freaking out like, wow, that's great. And I'm waiting for Coco Beware behind the curtain to thank him, to give him a big hug. And he came through that curtain. He wanted to kick my ass big time. He was pissed off.
Sure.
And I swear to God, 2-3 guys stopped him. He would have kicked my ass. But then now, after that, I explained to him, I'm really sorry and all that, but what a bad thing to happen. It's my first shock stick that I use. And I almost killed a guy, or almost made him. So what a story. And today when I meet him in Comic-Cons or I talk on the phone with him, he actually gave a good word for wrestling-academy.ca. You see Coco put a nice word in there too. And we always been friends, me and him. And the first thing we do when we haven't spoken in a couple of years, say, hey, Coco, you remember that match we had? And I don't have to say anything more. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. So now, anyway, all this to say, now you can bring me to jail now. It's time to go to jail, okay?
So rather than rehashing the idea, because it's pretty self-explanatory, and fans go back and watch SummerSlam 1991. It's, first of all, it's one of the best SummerSlams ever, period. Having the match made in hell, Macho Man gets married, Jake the Snake and Undertaker attack him with a snake at the reception. I mean, it's over the top ridiculous, but again, as a wrestling fan, it's one of my all-time favorites. So rather than rehashing the match and everything else, I've always wanted to ask you this for so many years, and I'm glad we got to have this chat. When did you film the vignettes in the jail with the prisoner and the guy who liked the leather and all that? I mean, it's hilarious, and you're flicking off the camera and everything else. Like, when was all that filmed? Was that like earlier in the day, or did you guys actually do that live?
When you shoot an angle like that for over a year, where I'm beating all the baby faces, and Big Boss Man is beating all the heels, and we're always referring to each other like, hey, Mountie, I'm gonna get you, and Big Boss Man, I'm the real law enforcement officer, I'm gonna get you. And so we had this thing that we went up, and we always are in the unknown territory. Like when we get to this big jailhouse match, to be honest with you, although it's a work, we always hope that we're gonna go over, because you want your character to keep going, and your character has so much heat. So I didn't want to lose that match, and I didn't know nothing until the morning of the show, when they called me at the hotel, and they asked me. They said the morning of the show, and like at 8 a.m, Pat called me and he said, Jacques, he says, would you go to the precinct in New York? He says, we'd like to do some videotapes, something. And I'm saying to myself, that doesn't look good there. It doesn't look too good for me. If I'm going to do vignettes, that means that I'm probably going to lose the match. But up to that date, I was hoping that I would screw Big Boss Man or do something. So we did it in the morning. But what amazing videos. I'm not going to rehash the whole things that we did. And that with the gay guy at the end too, in the film, that he's a monster. And we had this big face to face, and I'm like scared. I'm looking at him because I realized so big. And then he looks at me, comes face to face. The camera's right in his face. And he goes like, hi. And the people around the world were watching this on giant screen, and every arena was sold out around the world. And can you imagine that? No ring in the middle, just them full seats everywhere in the arenas, and they're watching me spending the night with a gay guy, which was twice my size. And and the people just said the Mountie's gonna get screwed tonight, and it was just so awesome. That's epic, and So up to this date, there's not one person I do a podcast. There's not one Comic-Con I go to. There's not one person that doesn't refer to that 91 SummerSlam, which was awesome.
It was amazing. And, I thank you again for coming on tonight. We're almost done here. A few more questions. Thank you very much. I always felt that they rewarded you because you did such a good job with that, right? Like, you did an amazing job. All of a sudden, they put the title on you. They put the Intercontinental title on you a little short while after this. Now, I have a question, and if you're unable to answer it, it's okay, because I'm not asking for a ton of insider information or anything like that.
No, go ahead, Vince.
I've always wanted to know that when they came to you and said, we're going to put you over Brett, did they also tell you in the next breath, but, you're going to drop it to Piper 2 days later. Do you know that, or was it another situation where you didn't?
Well, here's how it happened. Here's how it happened. I was in Springfield, Massachusetts,
Right.
and just going to my match, and early in during the day, Pat comes to see me in the dressing room. He says, Vince wants to see you. So I'm going like, oh yeah, okay. Like, did I do anything wrong or whatever? I'm trying to think. And so we get into this ring, in this room. There's Pat, Vince, and myself. And then Vince. So Pat starts talking. Vince is just looking at my attitude, I guess. And so Pat says, now listen, Jacques, he says, we got good news and bad news. So he says, what news would you like to have first? I said, give me the good news. He says, well, he says, you're going to become the Intercontinental champion tonight. I said, no way. So I'm standing up in front of them, almost dancing like Tatanka. I'm just so freaking happy. But then he says to me, Jacques, sit down. He says, we got the bad here, the bad news, you got the flowers, now here comes the pot. But anyway, so it's like, he says, listen, he says, in 2 nights from now, he says, you're going to be at Royal Rumble and you're going to drop the title to Piper. And I went like, oh yeah, but it's okay. Right away, I said, it's okay, because I knew I'd have enough time to take a picture with it and send it to my Montreal newspaper, to have a picture. And the funniest thing about that was, I didn't mind it. I was just so amazed and that they used me because Brett didn't want to drop the title to Piper. I think that's the inside story, the real truth, because Brett has always been a hard guy to deal with, and when it switched titles and stuff like that. So I think but the fact that they used me to put me in that position, it just made me up there with the top guys, working, taking a belt and dropping it. And I came up with the idea with Piper where he had the vest underneath his shirt there, the anti-shock vest there. So when at the end I zap him and then it doesn't work and then he beats me. And so I had such a great time. And the funniest thing about that, Vince, I got to tell you, I'm doing Comic-Cons all over now these days. And everywhere I go, every doll they bring to me, every picture they bring to me, I have the Intercontinental belt on the picture or with my toy. And the funniest thing is I'm the shortest lived Intercontinental title of all the history of wrestling. And then people remember me 35 years ago and they come up to me just being nice to me and polite to me, but they say, hey, you're the greatest Intercontinental champion. And I say to myself, wow, 2 days. But, but people seem to tag me with that Intercontinental title. And I don't know why.
Because it was such an upset. Like I said, I'm like the biggest Bret Hart fan there is. So for me, like, Bret Hart to me is my end-all be-all, right? But here's the thing. I didn't think it was beatable. So, and no offense to you, but you just got your butt kicked by Big Boss Man, spent a night in jail, and all of a sudden you're being Bret Hart. Like, so it's like mind blown when that happened. I mean, that's
amazing.
Wanted to touch base with you too. This is kind of cool here. You come back, after that, would have been about maybe a year and a half later. You're part of a tag team called the Quebecers. Great gimmick. They put the titles on you. You guys are beating the Steiner brothers right away, which is, again, shocking because they were the All-American team. You ride that horse for 6-7 months as champions straight through WrestleMania. It was a big deal. Your partner, which I find this to be amazing because we all knew you. We knew you as Jacques. We knew you as the Mountie. But here's this guy we don't know much about, Pierre Ouellet. All of a sudden, here we are, 30 years later, this guy's going strong, fresh off a Ring of Honor championship. He's on Impact now. Like, what can you say about working with him and everything he's done? Because I think it's an inspiration. I mean, to me, it's mind-boggling that, no offense, at his age and everything he's been through, this guy could do this. It's incredible.
It was amazing. And when I first met him in Puerto Rico, after the Mountie gimmick, the reason why the Mountie gimmick stopped, it's because I would have had a long run, but the real Royal Canadian Mounties took a lawsuit against Vince, and they didn't like the image I was giving to the Mounties, and so they took me off TV. They weren't allowed to show me on TV anymore. They had a lawsuit, so that's why my character died not long after that, because I would have had a long run with the Mountie. I could have had a lot longer run, and so I went back home, and then I was doing independent wrestling. I went to Carlos Coron in Puerto Rico. I was wrestling Abdullah that night, and on the beach. This guy comes up to me during the day and he taps on my shoulder and he says to me, and I don't know the guy, and he comes up, but he speaks French. So he comes up to me and he says, hey, salut Jacques, ça va bien? And I go like, hey, ça va? You speak French, huh? He says, yeah. He says, I don't want to bother you. He says, could you just do me one favor? He says, can you watch my match tonight? He says, you're on last with Abdullah, but he says, I'm on first. And he says, I just want you to watch my match. And that's what I did. And then after that, after the show, he came to see me after my match with Abdullah. And then he just came to see me. He said, did you have a chance to see my match? I said, sure I did. I said, listen, why don't you call me in 4 days from now? And he looked at me, says, why? I said, just call me in 4 days. I think I have something for you. So then at the time, I was so tight with Vince, I just called Vince up on the Monday. I said, Vince, and I'd been off for a while. I said, Vince, I think I just found this guy that I'd like to come back as a tag team with. I said, he's incredible. You know, he bumps and he falls on the cement floor. He's like Gumby, you know, the green man there that you just twist all over and he comes back straight. And you know, so we put up a ring in my yard. And for 3 months, 4 months, we practiced like 3 times a week. And then the first night we came into Raw, the first night we beat the Steiners for the Quebec rules, the first night. And then for a whole year, we traveled as we won the titles 3 times. Yeah. You know, once Marty Jannetty, 1, 2, 3 Kid beat us, and then we beat them back, and then the Moms, and we beat them back. And so it was like we did a whole year as tag team champions, you know, most of the time. So that was a great run. And today to see Carl go as Frankenstein or this gimmick that he did, you know, it's amazing to see that he's 52 years old, I think 51 or 52 years old, and he's taking bumps like, you know, on the cement floor still like he did 30 years ago. You know, so I just hope that he doesn't end up like Mankind, where Mankind can't walk anymore or just about. But he's like he does in his gimmick, and he says he's not human, you know, and he's not human. And so what a great asset for Quebec. What a great thing for me personally to see that I brought this guy in the business, you know, in the professional league, and that he's honoring that so well, you know, today. So I have just nothing but good things to say about Carl, and great memories that I had with me and him together.
Just tremendous. I wanted to ask you one last question that I wanted you to talk one more time about the National Canadian Tournament. One last question for you, and this is a question that, you know, they say like, oh, this is a dime a dozen. This is not the case. You are probably one of the few people in the entire world who could answer this question. Okay, you're from Canada. You're Canadian wrestler #1. You've been around promotions. You've promoted fights. You've seen it all. You've trained wrestlers. Okay. You wrestled for Vince McMahon, and you obviously know the Hart family. Canadian pride is a very real thing. So when all that stuff happened with Brett and Vince back in '97, you know, at that time you were with WCW for a little bit, so you weren't there. But hearing about all that, were you like shocked, or was it something where you said to yourself, again, being from Canada, like, this doesn't surprise me?
No. To be honest with you, Brett has a nice word for us too on wrestling-academy.ca. He's a great inspiration for all the Canadian wrestlers for this wrestling academy I'm doing. But I love Brett to death. You know, I've always been really close friends. I worked 4 years with him in the WWF, 2 years as babyface and then 2 years as heels. Yeah. You know, and then I worked with him as the Intercontinental title so many times. But Brett is a hard businessman. He plays a rough game and a hard game, and I think it came back to him because, you know, like even when we beat him in Quebec, you know, we took the titles away from him, and they never acknowledged it they never acknowledged it on TV, and that we were tagged that Raymond and I became champions, and you know we beat them on a Monday night, and the next thing you know, on Saturday everybody in Quebec are looking to see the Rougeau brothers representing the whole world and from Quebec. And then they took the titles back 3 days in the newspaper saying it wasn't the right guy and this and that. And then even when I beat Brett for the Intercontinental title, you know, Brett came to the ring, and then before we started the match, the announcer said, against the doctor's will, you know, because he's doing 104 fever, you know, he wants to wrestle anyway. So I beat him that night, but who did I beat? I beat a sick man who was 104, you know, so he didn't always have the right way, I think, of giving back. And I think that now he was going to WCW. He wanted to take the WWF title that belongs to Vince and the WWF, and he didn't want to give it back to them before he left. So there comes a time where you're going to face things like that. So when that happened, the screw job in Montreal, I wasn't really like amazed, surprised after I knew that he didn't want to drop the title, because all those people helped Brett to get where he was, and I was one of them. So there comes a time where you have to give recognition back to the people who worked for you, and put you over. And I love Brett to death, I love him to death, but I could tell him to his face, I always did, and he still, I've been telling this interview for 30 years now, and he still did a good word for me for Wrestling Academy. So I think he recognizes that today. But I also think, now this is another thing that I think, I always had this little animosity inside my heart towards him because of that. And now I'm starting to think he marketed himself so well, he got so far in the business, that did he really do it the wrong way? Or maybe it's just me that was such a nice guy, always saying a yes man. I'm always saying yes, yes, Vince, yes, Vince, yes, Vince. And at the end, I got screwed with Vince. So it's like, so who's right and who's wrong? There's a fine line. There's a fine line there. And Brett, I tell him that, and he sees that now, that maybe he had a little bit of right. It's just that there's collateral damage when you have decisions that you take like that in your career with your peers. But at the same time, if you're building your reputation, you maybe that was a good way of doing it. So who knows? But the bottom line is I'm going to go out west this fall when I go back to my Winnebago. I'm going to take a ride after all this Wrestling Academy thing is done over. I'm going to go do another tour with my Winnebago and my girlfriend, and I'm going to stop by Brett by Calgary, and I'm going to go have a meal with him. And I always loved Brett, and I always loved his family. So I hope that answers a little bit your question.
Oh, you did. And like I said, when I was emailing you to try to set everything up, I'm one of those guys, I try to keep everything positive. And I can't control what someone says on my show. I mean, unfortunately, we were the show last year or 2 years ago where, Terry Reynolds came on and said that stuff about Brock Lesnar. And the next thing I know, it's all over like the world internet. I'm like, I didn't even ask her that question. She just blurted it out that he did something to her, and I won't get into it, but like, I don't ask those kind of questions. Like for me, I've always told people, yes, I am a broadcast journalist, but at the same time, I'm a fan, and
I could tell you one thing. I could tell you with this Wrestling Academy, I really know who my friends are. If you go see on wrestling-academy.ca, you'll see all the old timers like me that did some nice videos. You have a $1 Million Man in there. You got Undertaker did one for me. You go see the people in there. You're not GSP and MMA did one for me. You have singers, there's rockers, there's comedians, there's all kinds of people that encourage this project, but mostly wrestlers that I work with, Tito Santana and all the guys, Ronnie Garvin, and you'll see all the guys so I really know today that Lanny Poffo is one of them, and I could go on, and it's like go on, see the old timers that are encouraging all these Canadian wrestlers. And I realized today that although all the animosity that we may have had in the dressing room and stuff like that we have a mutual respect for spending 25 days a month together, like 25 nights in a row before seeing our family for just 4 days, and then going back together, being married to these guys. And in those days, we had to compete, trying to get for the better spot, who's going to go up further, who's going to be next champions, who's going to have the most valued, the merchant value. But at the time now that it's all over with, I look back now and I meet these guys, Tugboat. I see these guys. He has a nice word for me too. So you see all these guys, we really liked each other. We're not in a competing mood anymore. It's like we're out of that, and we were like brothers in that, and family in that business for so many years. So it's awesome to see all these people that are coming helping me in this project, this Canadian project, which has never been done before. And then I'm going to do it for the next 6-7 years. I'm going to recruit always the best wrestlers in Canada, put them together, make an elimination tournament by voting by people, the fans. It's not voted by me. And it's really going to be something that the people and the fans are going to vote for. And I encourage everybody to really go on wrestling-academy.ca and subscribe right now, because the tournament's starting on the 15th of May. The first round is starting, and then the 26th of June is the first round still, and then we're going to the semifinals in August, and then the 26th of August, the last date, because there's a 14th and the 28th. I mean, the 28th of August, QT Marshall is coming to Montreal to assist the last 8 wrestlers that are going to meet each other. When there's going to be girls winning in there, and there's going to be guys winning in there. And QT is going to take the 4 winners with him and go back to the Nightmare Factory for 3 months. And what an opening, what a position. It's an incredible position because, you know, there's two things that could make it happen in wrestling. I always said that for someone who wants to start in wrestling and is young, is like being at the right place at the right time. And then the other thing is not always what you could do in wrestling, is who you know. So if you go spend 3 months at the Nightmare Factory, not only that now that Cody Rhodes is gone with WWE, so they'll be recruiting from there. And QT Marshall from AEW, they'll be recruiting from there. So what a great opportunity for those 4 wrestlers that not only going to be there, like, because when this started, Vince, I got to tell you 2 seconds. When this started, I had 4 sponsors that gave $5,000. And then I said to myself, I need to get a good candy there, a good, something really big to draw all these wrestlers from Canada to join in. And I finally thought of saying, what if I got this wrestling school, you know, this American wrestling school to come in? So I called QT Marshall up and he was so nice to me. And I asked him, I said, QT, I said, would you give me 1 day, just 1 day? I said, I'd like to take my 4 winners down to Atlanta and I want you to judge them. I want you to put them in the ring and see how they're good on the mic and see how they're good in the ring. And that'll be a bonus gift for them for the 4 winners. So he said, sure, I'll do that for you. And he said, I'll do that for you, Mr. Rougeau. He's calling me Mr. Rougeau because he said he had respect for me, I guess. It's so funny. I didn't expect that. And then as we went along, like 9 months ago, that started. And then after about 4 or 5 months, every podcast I was doing, every interview I was doing in Australia and Europe, because I'm very popular still, the Mountie. So I'm doing all these podcasts. I was putting that little video on that QT Marshall had that was saying that he would look out for the 4 winners and just give them a tryout, you know, or something. So now 6 months later, QT Marshall calls me back. So when I answer the phone, he says, Jacques, he says, so I'm going, yes, like, what did I do wrong? Like, you know, he says, no, he says, my phone is red at the Nightmare Factory. He says, you keep talking about the Nightmare Factory. He says, you're doing a hell of a job in promoting my wrestling school. So he says, why don't we do a gift? He says, why don't we give your winners a week instead of 1 day? And I said to myself, wow, a week. That means you never have a second chance to make a first impression. But if you stay a week, if you screw up on Monday, you have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to make up. And then as we went along about 2 months ago, I'm going on this podcast in Montreal, Nick Dros's podcast in Montreal. So on there's a few haters out there, a few jealous people are saying, hey, that's not true. Jacques is using the school to get some popularity in this contest. And so I called QT, I said, QT, I'm going on this major podcast in Montreal. There's a few haters out there and then people that are against me on this project. They don't believe it. Can you make me a new video just to prove that this is true? So I think you have this video. Yep. But I sent it to you. I hope you got it. But anyway, so listen to this here. So he puts can we play it now? Is it possible to play it now, or are you going to add it?
I'm going to add it once we're done.
So let me tell the story then. And when you people finish this video, you make sure you listen to this video, because what he does is he tells me that, okay, Jacques, I'll do you another video. So that was like a couple of months ago. So I'm sitting at home and I get his video just before going to this Nick Dros's podcast, one of the biggest podcasts I've been on. And I get this video, so I check it out just for going on the podcast. And then he says, well, you heard it from the horse's mouth. He says, this is a real deal. And he says, I'm going to give 3 months to the 4 winners. And I'm going like, I look at my girlfriend, I said, I think he fucked up. I'm sorry. I think he screwed up. He said 3 months. So then I rewind it. So then I listened to about 4 or 5 times. So he went from 1 day to 1 week the 3 months that he's giving to my 4 winners. Now, here's the difference. You got to understand, Vince, what's the difference is. The difference is when you're there for a week, it was great. You know, it's not Mr. Finally, after a week, it's not Mr. Marshall, it's QT. But when you're there for 3 months, it's more like, hey, buddy. Then you learn and you laugh with them. You're his friend now. You've been there for 3 months. And plus, all the AEW wrestlers that train at the Nightmare Factory, they could come in and they're going to meet the talent too, the girls that are there and the guys that are there. And they're going to come around the ring, and they've seen them for 3 months now. So they become friends with them. So now the wrestlers come around them and say, hey, I've been looking at you there for the last few months. You're working very hard and stuff. And maybe if I were you, I'd work on this thing here, you know, and like I go back to saying, there's 2 things that are very important in life to become a wrestler, is knowing the right people and being at the right place at the right time. And I think that this contest is going to bring this opportunity to all the Canadian wrestlers, females and male wrestlers. And plus all this, for the last 9 months, if you go on wrestling-academy.ca, you will see every contestant has a little video there. You just click on their face, and then you could go see their talking and doing their best moves in the ring. That's a promotional reel for them. That's 30 seconds each. So you get to know the talent. So QT Marshall has been following this for the last 9 months.
Yep.
So no matter if you win or you don't win at the end, the 4 winners, I told on my team from Canada, from Halifax to Vancouver, I said, you already won. Because now they've seen you. You got exposure around the world with all the podcasts I gave you. So we're all winners in this thing. You know, so what a great opportunity for Canadian wrestlers.
Absolutely. I wanted to thank you again for your time tonight. All that information that Jacques just got done talking about, if you look in the same link as this video and the podcast, we're going to put out a video of this and also audio of this. You'll have the link to the website, the tournament information, and that video from QT. Jacques, everybody here at Keon Sports, we thank you for your time tonight. Want to wish you the best of luck. And, thank you again for everything. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. And just remember, the Mountie always gets his man.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vince.
Take care, sir.
Ciao.